In the early days of January, political shockwaves spread across Latin America and far beyond when dramatic developments involving Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro began dominating global headlines. Reports emerging from Caracas described an atmosphere of confusion, tension, and disbelief as unexpected events unfolded around the seat of power. Nicolás Maduro, long known for his defiant stance against Western pressure, appeared visibly shaken as international media, diplomats, and analysts struggled to interpret the rapidly changing situation. Streets in parts of the capital were unusually quiet, while social media platforms filled with speculation, rumors, and emotional reactions from Venezuelans both inside the country and abroad. What intensified the shock was the sudden global narrative linking Venezuela to broader ideological and religious discussions. Online videos and viral posts claimed the rise of a massive Muslim movement within Venezuela, portraying it as a new social force that had caught the government and the world off guard. While these claims spread rapidly across YouTube, TikTok, and messaging apps, they were met with skepticism from experts, who pointed out that Venezuela's Muslim population is relatively small and historically focused on cultural and religious life rather than political mobilization. Nevertheless, the narrative itself gained momentum, creating pressure on the Maduro administration to respond. Inside government circles, officials attempted to control the message, dismissing exaggerated claims while accusing foreign media of psychological warfare and misinformation. Maduro's supporters framed the situation as another attempt to destabilize the country through propaganda, while opposition voices argued that the real shock was the government's weakening grip on public trust. Internationally, newsrooms seized on the dramatic language, amplifying the sense that Venezuela had entered yet another unpredictable chapter. As images, statements, and unverified reports continued to circulate, one thing became clear. Season 1 of this unfolding story was defined less by confirmed facts and more by shock, perception, and the power of global reaction. The world was watching Venezuela once again, waiting to see whether the headlines signaled a genuine transformation or simply another media-driven storm. As the initial shock began to settle, the story quickly moved beyond Venezuela's borders and transformed into a full-scale international debate. Governments, analysts, and global media outlets shifted their focus from Caracas to the wider implications for regional stability and world politics. Statements poured in from capitals across the Americas, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, each interpreting the situation through its own strategic lens. Allies and critics of Nicolás Maduro alike recognized that whatever was unfolding in Venezuela could not be viewed in isolation. In Washington, the developments were framed as evidence of deepening instability in a country already crippled by economic collapse and political polarization. American commentators debated whether the situation proved the failure of Maduro's long-standing policies or the consequences of relentless external pressure. Meanwhile, several Latin American governments urged caution, warning that sensational narratives and unverified claims could inflame tensions and provoke unrest. Calls for respect for sovereignty, dialogue, and calm became a recurring theme in official statements. Across Europe, reactions were more restrained but no less concerned. Diplomats emphasized the need for reliable information, stressing that exaggerated reports about religious or ideological movements could distort reality and complicate diplomatic efforts. At the same time, human rights organizations highlighted the vulnerability of ordinary Venezuelans, arguing that global power struggles and media sensationalism often come at the expense of civilians already facing shortages, migration pressures, and uncertainty. In parts of the Muslim world, the story sparked discussion rather than mobilization. Commentators debated the portrayal of Muslims in Latin America, questioning why a small and largely peaceful community was suddenly being depicted as a geopolitical force. Religious leaders cautioned against politicizing faith, reminding audiences that Islam in Venezuela has historically been rooted in commerce, family life, and cultural exchange, not mass political activism. By the end of this phase, Season 2 was defined by global reactions, diplomatic positioning, and growing concern over misinformation. The world was no longer just watching Venezuela, it was debating how narratives, power, and perception could reshape international realities. As international reactions continued to unfold, attention gradually shifted toward public opinion and political calculations both inside and outside Venezuela. Within the country, ordinary citizens followed global coverage with mixed emotions. Some viewed the intense foreign focus as a sign that long-ignored Venezuelan suffering was finally being acknowledged, while others feared that external narratives would once again override local realities. In markets, universities, and online forums, conversations reflected deep uncertainty about what the growing international spotlight might ultimately bring. The opposition used the moment to argue that the Maduro government had lost credibility not only at home but on the world stage. They claimed that the administration's inability to control the narrative exposed deeper structural weaknesses in governance and communication. Pro-government voices, however, countered that Venezuela was under a coordinated information attack designed to justify pressure, sanctions, or future intervention. State media emphasized themes of national dignity and resistance, urging citizens to remain united against what it described as foreign manipulation. Across the region, neighboring countries carefully assessed the mood of their own populations. Latin American leaders were acutely aware that instability in Venezuela often translates into migration flows, economic strain, and political tension beyond its borders. Public opinion in these countries was divided between sympathy for Venezuelans and fatigue over a crisis that has persisted for years. This balancing act influenced official rhetoric, which remained cautious and non-committal. In the United States and Europe, public debate reflected broader ideological divides. Some commentators framed the situation as proof that authoritarian systems inevitably collapse under pressure, while others warned that oversimplified narratives ignore complex social realities. Polls and talk shows revealed growing skepticism about dramatic headlines, with many viewers questioning the credibility of claims spreading online. Season 3 thus became a story about perception, politics, and people. It highlighted how public opinion, shaped by media and political agendas, can become as influential as events on the ground, turning Venezuela into a mirror for global anxieties and divisions. As the story moved toward its fourth phase, attention turned from immediate reactions to long-term consequences and unanswered questions. Analysts began focusing on what these dramatic narratives and global responses could mean for Venezuela's future stability, its political system, and its place in the international order. The initial shock and heated debates gradually gave way to deeper reflection about whether this moment would mark a real turning point or fade into another chapter of prolonged uncertainty. Inside Venezuela, expectations remained fragile. Many citizens hoped that the intense global focus might push political actors toward dialogue, reforms, or at least a reduction in everyday hardships. Others remained deeply skeptical, shaped by years of broken promises and shifting headlines. Economists warned that continued uncertainty, fueled by sensational reporting and international pressure, could further damage investor confidence and slow any chance of recovery. Social cohesion, already strained, risked being tested again if fear and misinformation continued to spread. On the international stage, governments reassessed their strategies. Some called for renewed diplomatic engagement, emphasizing negotiation, humanitarian support, and credible mediation rather than confrontation. International organizations stressed the importance of verified information, cautioning that exaggerated or misleading narratives could inflame tensions and undermine peace efforts. The Venezuela case increasingly became an example used in global discussions about information warfare and the power of digital media to shape political outcomes. For Muslim communities in Venezuela and across Latin America, the future focus shifted toward reassurance and normalization. Community leaders emphasized coexistence, rejecting attempts to link their faith to geopolitical drama. They sought to protect their social standing by highlighting decades of peaceful integration and contribution to Venezuelan society. By the close of this phase, Season 4 stood as a moment of reflection and possibility. Whether Venezuela moves toward stability, reform, or continued turbulence will depend not only on political decisions but also on how responsibly the world chooses to engage, report, and react in the months and years ahead.